Hello and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely incredible 500-year story of what might be the world's most famous painting.
So, let me ask you this. What if the world's most famous painting was actually, in a way, designed to fall apart? It's a fascinating thought, right? Here we have this masterpiece from one of history's greatest minds, but it started to decay, literally, while he was still alive. It's this incredible paradox of genius and, well, fragility. So, let's get into it.
So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the genius himself and his patron. Then we'll look at why it was such an experimental and flawed masterpiece. We'll freeze frame that iconic moment in time, then trace its 5 centuries of peril. And finally, we'll cover the incredible 21-year rescue and a surprising rival you've probably never even heard of.
Okay, first things first. To really get a handle on the painting, you have to understand the people who made it possible. And that, of course, starts with the man himself, the one and only Leonardo da Vinci.
I mean, when you hear the term Renaissance man, Leonardo da Vinci is pretty much the definition, isn't he? He wasn't just a painter, he was a sculptor, an architect, an engineer, an anatomist. His curiosity was just boundless. We're talking about a guy who is sketching out ideas for tanks and parachutes centuries before they were reality, all while painting masterpieces like the Mona Lisa. Just an incredible mind.
But, even a genius like Leonardo needs someone to pay the bills. And for him, in Milan, that person was Ludovico Sforza. He was the Duke of Milan, and he had this nickname, Il Moro, which means the Moor.
So Sforza commissions this massive painting for the dining hall, the refectory of the Santa Maria della Grazia monastery. And his big plan was for this place to eventually become his family's grand mausoleum. But here's the twist of fate. Sforza ended up being captured by the French, and he actually died in a prison. He never got to be buried there. Kind of a sad irony, really.
All right, so now we get to the creation of the painting itself, and this is where things get complicated. See, Leonardo, always the innovator, decided he wasn't going to do a normal, run-of-the-mill fresco. Nope, he wanted to try something new, something radical, and it turned out to be a formula for disaster.
Okay, so this really gets to the heart of the problem. With a traditional fresco, you paint on wet plaster. The paint and plaster dry together, and the color basically becomes part of the wall. It's super durable, but you have to work fast. Leonardo hated that. He wanted to take his time, to add details, to change his mind. So he decided to paint on a drywall. He prepped it with this experimental base of gesso, pitch, and mastic, and then used tempera paint on top.
And what happened? Well, the paint just sat on the surface. It never really bonded with the wall like a true fresco does. And then, to make things even worse, he added a layer of white lead to make the colors pop. But all that did was trap moisture seeping in from the wall behind it. It basically sealed its own doom. The masterpiece started falling apart almost immediately.
So, let's talk about what the painting is actually showing us. It freezes one of the most dramatic moments imaginable. Jesus has just dropped a bombshell on his apostles. He's just said, "One of you will betray me." And what Leonardo does so brilliantly is capture the explosion of human emotion in that split second. It's less a religious painting and more a deep dive into human psychology.
And right in the middle of all that chaos, you have Jesus. He's perfectly calm, serene, almost forming a stable triangle shape. His hands are gesturing to the bread and wine, which of course are central to the Eucharist. And look behind him, that window. The light from outside creates this perfect, natural halo. It's such a clever move by Leonardo, way more subtle than a big golden disc.
Okay, let's start on the far left with the first group of 3. These guys are just in pure shock. You've got Bartholomew, who's actually shot up out of his seat. He just cannot process what he's hearing. And next to him, Andrew has his hands up in this gesture that's like, whoa, hold on, stop, this isn't happening.
Now this next group, this is where the real drama is. You have Judas, and Leonardo makes it so clear he's leaning back into the shadows, his face darkened. And look closely, he's clutching a little bag of money, his payment for the betrayal. And he's also knocked over the salt, which was a huge symbol of a broken pact or bad luck. Then there's Peter, ever the hothead, leaning in with a knife in his hand, a little foreshadowing of him cutting off a soldier's ear later on. And then you have John, the youngest, who looks almost peacefully sad, just taking it all in.
Moving over to the right of Jesus, this group is all about questions. You can practically hear them. There's doubting Thomas, pointing that famous finger up, as if he's already questioning things. James the Greater just throws his arms out wide in total alarm. And Philip, Poor Philip points to himself with this look on his face that just screams, "Is it me, Lord? Surely not me." And then, all the way at the end of the table on the far right, you have the last group. Matthew and Jude Thaddeus have turned to Simon, who's the older one, as if he'll have some answers. But Simon just throws his hands up in the air. His gesture basically says, "I have no idea." It kind of completes that wave of emotion that started all the way on the other side of the table.
So you'd think that a flawed creation would be the worst of its problems, right? Well, that was just the beginning. For the next 500 years, this poor painting was going to suffer through, well, pretty much everything you can imagine.
I mean, just look at this history. It's just one tragedy after another. As early as 1517, people were reporting that it was flaking. In 1652, the monks literally cut a door through the bottom of the wall right through Jesus' feet. Can you imagine? Then in 1796, when Napoleon's troops were there, they used the dining hall as a stable for their horses and for fun threw rocks at the painting. It's just heartbreaking. And then came World War II. In 1943, an Allied bomb flattened the monastery. The whole dining hall was just gone. Rubble everywhere. But somehow, almost miraculously, the one wall with the Last Supper on it was left standing. The only thing that protected it was a simple wall of sandbags. It's just unbelievable that it survived. So, after all that, by the 1970s, the painting was in terrible shape. It was a ghost of its former self. Most of what you could see wasn't even Leonardo's work anymore, but layers of dirt, glue, and terrible repaint jobs from past centuries. It was pretty clear that if something wasn't done, and done soon, it would be lost forever.
Yeah, the official reports back then were just depressing. This one from 1972 basically said that what we were looking at had very little to do with the original. Everyone thought that those past restorations, and I'm using air quotes here, had just ruined it. They thought Leonardo's original painting was gone for good, buried under all that gunk.
But then, one person stepped up to take on this impossible task. Her name was Pinan Brambilla Barcelon. She was a master restorer, and she was about to dedicate a massive part of her career to saving this one painting. And how long did it take? 21 years. Think about that. For 2 decades, from 1978 all the way to 1999, she and her team basically performed surgery on the painting. They worked millimeter by millimeter, using tiny tools and special solvents to carefully peel away centuries of damage, slowly, painstakingly, revealing the faint colors of Leonardo's actual work underneath.
Now, here's a final twist to the story that I think is just fascinating. To really appreciate the strange fate of the Last Supper, you actually have to turn around and look at the other wall in that same dining hall.
Because on the opposite wall is another huge mural, a painting of the Crucifixion. It was done by another artist, Montefarno, at the exact same time. And here's the kicker. He used the proper traditional fresco technique. So his painting is in almost perfect condition. It's vibrant, it's clear, and almost nobody has ever heard of it. It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? The technically perfect painting is completely ignored, while everyone flocks to see Leonardo's beautiful, fragile, broken masterpiece. And even today, after all that work, the painting is unbelievably delicate. They have this incredibly advanced climate control system to protect it. When you go to see it, you can only go in with a small group, and you only get 15 minutes. That's it. They have to seal the room to protect the painting from the humidity of our own breath. That's how fragile it is. So it leaves you with this question, right? Why are we so captivated by this broken, imperfect painting? Why does this fragile masterpiece move us more than a technically perfect one ever could? Maybe its power isn't just in the art itself. Maybe it's in its incredible story of survival. It's a testament to genius that refused to disappear, a beautiful, fragile thing that, against all odds, is still here, which, when you think about it, might just be a mirror for our own humanity.